For the first time in Asia, connect your landphone and smartphone through SLT Wi-Fi with the SLT Voice app.
Kishu takes issue. Chief of Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau laments the drip-feed nature of the government mechanism.
So you really don't have plans to stick around for too long?
No, as long as I'm given the opportunity to perform, do the right thing, I will stick around. But if you ask me whether I'm going to be here for the next 2 years, I will say no.
In limbo, the president in two minds over contesting the polls. Also denies knowledge of an Indian link to terrorists. Unwavering conviction. The Prime Minister is determined to push the counter-terrorism bill through. Perpetual misery. Sri Lanka slumps to a limp defeat in their World Cup opener. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 1st of June, 2019.
From AdaDerana. This is AdaDerana First at 9.
AdaDex ඇතුළත ඉදිමීම සමනය කරන අතර විනාඩි 5කින් ක්‍රියා කිරීම ආරම්භයි. AdaDex දිවියට නව දිරයක්. AdaDex වෙතින් එසේ කැක්කුමට විශේෂඥා AdaDex Headfast ඉක්මනට සහනය අදම අත්විඳින්න.
Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaka. Let's start with your local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena has expressed uncertainty over his candidacy in the looming presidential election, saying he's in no hurry to make a decision. Speaking at a media briefing held in New Delhi, the head of state also denied him being informed of any possible intelligence reports which say that his attackers travelled to India. Army Commander Lieutenant General Mahesh Seranayake previously stated that the relevant suspect had in fact travelled to the neighbouring superpower.
There was a controversy soon after the bomb blasts about that India had given advance information that it was not acted upon by Sri Lanka. You had made an address to the nation saying that had you known about it, you would have definitely taken action. And you had also sought time because the agencies were investigating the matter. So what is the conclusion? Was there an advance warning, and why did the government not act at that point of time?
India, Rajay, Sri Lanka, Rajay.
The government of India informed the intelligence service in Sri Lanka that such an attack could happen. A report was dispatched on this. The Indian government provided this information on the 4th of April. Head of security forces exchanged correspondence on this issue. The former defence secretary and the former IGP were keeping each other abreast about the situation via letters. I left the country on the 16th of April. I was in Sri Lanka for 12 days when intelligence services received this information, but no head of security informed me of it. If I knew about this situation, I would not have left the country, and I would have taken measures to avoid this catastrophe. This can be viewed as the failure of our heads of security.
The president was asked whether he received any report of terrorists travelling to India.
I have not been informed of receiving any intelligence report stating that the suspects travelled to India. Our intelligence service has reported that these groups are part of an international terrorist group. The suspects have travelled to countries which this terror organisation operate and received training. President Sirisena, meanwhile, today gave an assurance to the nation that he will not allow any foreign military on Sri Lankan soil as long as he is in office. The president made this remark during an event in Polonnaruwa this evening in response to recent calls for the government to prevent foreign interference in Sri Lanka. Today's newspaper reported that the chief prelates had urged the government not to allow foreign militaries to enter Sri Lanka. I must say that the government has not reached an agreement to permit foreign militaries to enter the country. Let me also pledge that I will not allow any country to send their military to Sri Lanka. I give you the assurance that I will not allow foreign forces here. In the meantime, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe continues to stress on the importance of having a counter-terrorism strategy in place in the fight against the so-called Islamic State. Speaking at an event in Matale today, the Premier insisted that Sri Lanka should join hands with every country that fight the terror group in a bid to eliminate it. Due to the existing internet facilities, many end up embracing the ISIS ideology. The need of the hour is to bring a counter-terrorism program as a strategy to eliminate ISIS. We as the Cabinet have the responsibility on our shoulders. We have 3 goals with this strategy. First, we should stop people joining Islamic State. Then we should stop the ISIS from launching attacks. Finally, there should be programs geared to face such attacks. We will also enforce the law against people who aid and abet extremism, violence and terrorism. We will also bring laws to control the internet. All intelligence units should collectively proceed on information regarding ISIS. We also have to work with foreign intelligence agencies. We should bring these strategies and amend them each year whilst joining hands with every country that fight against ISIS. Now, Professor Venerable Madhagoda Abethisa alleges that the government and some members of the international community are working in hand and glove to ensure foreign influence in Sri Lanka. Addressing a seminar at the AdaDerana temple in Narahempita today, the Thera went on to say that the eradication of the so-called IS is being used as a pretext towards this end. Ranil Wickremesinghe and powerful ministers of the government are of the view that we should curb this situation through support from the world. It is clear that they are adhering to the international contract they agreed to in 2015, and what Zaran did was facilitate this process for it to move forward. What do citizens expect from their government? Security and stability. After a policy is put forth, the President cannot reject it, saying he only got to know it via social media. Can a country be developed in such a manner? The hunger strike launched by parliamentarian Venerable Athuraliya Ratanathera entered its second day today, with the Thera receiving support from various factions. TNA parliamentarian S. Vyelendran too expressed solidarity by launching a protest fast in Batticaloa today in support of the demands put forth by the Thera.
Parliamentarian Athuraliya Ratanathera staged a hunger strike near the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy yesterday based on 4 demands. The demands are the removal of Minister Rishad Badiuddin, Governors MLAM Hizbullah and Asad Sali from their respective positions, as well as the establishment of an independent body to investigate allegations against Dr. Mohammad Shafi. The Thera was insistent that he will not let up until the demands are fulfilled by the President. Our correspondent on the ground reported that the hunger strike was also supported by members of the All Ceylon Graduate Teachers Association. Meanwhile, members of the Mahasangha, parliamentarians and representatives of civil organizations also called on the Thera last evening. Meanwhile, TNA parliamentarian S. Vyelendran also joined the cause in an attempt to support the Thera, launching a fast adjacent the Gandhi Park in Batticaloa today.
Politicians who are accused of wrongdoing should be investigated impartially. During the recent past, Governor Hizbullah and Minister Rishad Badiuddin are the ones who promoted racism inside and outside the parliament through words as well as by deed. It was said in parliament that Muslims in the north and east will take arms. What they dreamt became reality on the 21st of April. There is more local news on the other side of this short commercial break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Bureau, Kishu Gomez, expressed dismay in the bureaucratic process of the government, saying that reforms are needed to establish more efficient systems, especially when it comes to crisis response, such as the Easter Sunday attacks. Speaking to Indivari Amwatta at Hyde Park, Gomez revealed that it took 6 weeks to receive cabinet approval for the pre-campaign or PR campaign, that required urgent implementation in order to save the image of the tourism industry.
The PR campaign. As you said, you looked at how we go forward beyond this, what's happened in Sri Lanka. It's just, we hear news about the PR campaign just being approved and the global marketing plan is approved.
PR campaign is a proposal that we submitted immediately after the attack, and it took this many weeks.
6 weeks.
To get it approved because cabinet approval process itself
was this plan, the framework itself, did it need urgent implementation?
It needed urgent implementation, no question about it. It should have been implemented 3 days after the attack. But as I said, being a government entity, you still have to follow the same process. Cabinet approval process is the shortest, one can follow in order to get something approved. If we were to follow the normal, procurement process, it would have taken, 40 days.
But
this time,
in an emergency as this, did you not request authorities that they meet earlier? Because this is Sri Lanka, this is the third largest and fastest growing industry of Sri Lanka.
So from my side, I did what I could, within my authority. I went to the extent of, doing a cabinet paper draft. Obviously, the cabinet paper per se is done by the ministry secretary, but I sat with the ministry officials to write the document, and that's the extent to which I played my role. So this is the 6th week after the attack, and now we have to obviously come up with a refreshed PR plan.
What we lack in not just in tourism is that we don't have consistent policy framework. But are you looking at a strategy that could be consistent regardless of government change or change of political camp?
Yeah. So consistency has been an issue, not just now, but over the past several decades. Everyone has been talking about it. We are still battling with that issue, which is true. As far as tourism is concerned, I'm occupying this seat today. But this has to be a permanent position, and I won't be that permanent man.
So you really don't have plans to stick around for too long?
No, as long as I'm given the opportunity to perform, do the right thing, I will stick around. But if you ask me whether I'm going to be here for the next 2 years, I will say no.
Now, Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Coomaraswamy, outlined Sri Lanka's plans to raise up to $4.5 billion in foreign borrowings in 2019, which includes $2 billion to manage debt in 2020. Speaking to journalists yesterday, he said the Treasury is expected to certify the 2018 debt number shortly, which will provide the opportunity for the CBSL to raise funds under the Active Liability Management Act. Through the Act, the government hopes to raise a further 480 billion rupees, which is about 4% of the debt stock.
According to the central bank, the Treasury is expected to certify the total public debt for 2018 very soon. This comes at a time when the IMF says that public debt is estimated to have increased significantly to about 90% of GDP, which is just over 13 trillion rupees at end 2018. Furthermore, external debt is estimated at 59% of GDP at end 2018, predominantly owned by the public sector. However, the question which remains is whether the central bank is able to raise the necessary funds to furnish debt payments in the upcoming year, following the recent attacks that impacted the country's economy. According to the central bank, gross official reserves are projected to be $8.2 billion at the end of the year, under the assumption of raising $2 billion more from international markets. Speaking to journalists yesterday, the central bank governor, Dr. Indrajit Coomaraswamy, spoke on action taken by the central bank to raise the necessary funds to maintain its reserves.
The cabinet has just approved the raising of $1.5 billion as out of the government's cash flow requirement, which could be upsized up to $2.5 billion if the market conditions are appropriate. The Treasury will certify the total outstanding public debt as of the 31st of December 2018. And that now opens up the opportunity to seek cabinet approval to raise money under the Active Liability Management Act. The Act permits the borrowing of up to 10% of the total debt stock outstanding at the end of the previous year. Approval will be sought by the Treasury to raise about the equivalent of 480 billion rupees. That's about 4% of the stock. And the central bank and the Treasury together are looking at all options. Dollar-denominated international sovereign bond, samurai bond, it could be a panda bond, or it could be a term loan. And for a term loan, there is this possibility of the World Bank providing us with a policy-based guarantee. That's an instrument the World Bank has, where in return for reforms undertaken by a government, they provide a guarantee for money that is borrowed from abroad. It's all still being negotiated, but there is a possibility that they will take on an exposure of $250 million, which can be leveraged 4 times over. That means that the government can go out and borrow up to about $1 billion on the back of the World Bank's AAA rating. So this is where the big benefit is.
The governor further noted that the central bank has already settled more than half the external debt payment for this year.
And in terms of actually meeting the debts, 65% of the external debts to be paid this year have already been paid. And there is now a little bit of leeway because the external debt repayments this year were front-loaded, and next year they're back-loaded, with the next international sovereign bond payment due only in October of 2020. So that gives us a bit of flexibility. And the idea is to raise as much money as possible to look after not only the requirements for this year, but also to cover some of the payments of next year, because it's possible that the election season may well go on till about the middle of next year.
The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka has further amended its travel advisory for Sri Lanka to the primary level of take safety precautions. The embassy said that the Sri Lankan government has launched a large-scale crackdown on the extremist forces in the aftermath of the Easter explosions. Whilst mentioning that security has been beefed up in public places, the Chinese embassy, however, noted that the security situation in Sri Lanka has not returned to normal. The travel advisory is set to be in effect until the 21st of June. Now, Chinese tech giant Huawei may not be viewed favorably by several countries, including the US, but Malaysia has no intentions to shun the company. Speaking at the Future of Asia conference in Tokyo, Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad expressed the country's plans to make use of Huawei's technology as much as possible, saying the company's research is far bigger than Malaysia's capability and that Huawei had achieved tremendous advancement over American technology. Amid trade tensions between the US and China, Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister urged all to work together, insisting that the world will not work if it's fragmented into 2 blocks.
The US has got good capability to do research and development in the past. They must accept that that capability can also be found in the East. But you want to have a situation in which you are always ahead. If you are not ahead, I will ban you. I will send warships to your country. That is not competition. That is threatening people. In the Far East, if we want to come together, we should start with a common trading currency, not to be used locally, but for the purpose of settling of trade. So the currency that we propose should be based on gold.
Our goal is for all countries to work together can only be realized if we are part of one globalized system. This is precisely why the US and China have to work together. This will not work if the world is fragmented into 2 blocks with separate systems, technologies, and economies.
We're going to move in for a short break, but when we come back, it's international news. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now it is being reported across international media that North Korea's nuclear envoy has been executed as part of a purge of officials involved in a failed summit between the US and North Korea. The reports, however, need to be treated with extreme caution since reports of similar nature in the past have proven to be far from the truth. A single anonymous source had told a newspaper in Seoul that Kim Hyuk-chol, the former North Korean envoy to the US and a key figure in talks ahead of the summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump in Hanoi, was executed at an airport in Pyongyang. It is alleged that he was executed by firing squad in March for being won over by the American imperialists to betray the supreme leader. The media outlet goes on to say that 4 other North Korean foreign ministry officials were also executed that same month because of the crackdown of the February summit in Hanoi. A mass shooting at a government building in U.S. state of Virginia has left at least 12 people dead and several injured. The suspect, described by officials as a disgruntled city employee in Virginia Beach, fired indiscriminately in a municipal building yesterday. The gunman was killed in an exchange of gunfire with police and his identity has not been released. Officials said that an officer was wounded when a bullet struck his vest. One of the victims was shot outside in a car and the rest were found over 3 floors of the government building. 4 police officers had entered the building and engaged the gunman, with the ensuing shootout killing the attacker. Moving on to tennis, women's second seed Karolina Pliskova's dreams of maiden Grand Slam win is over, at least for now, with her exit from the French Open in Paris. Meanwhile, defending men's champion Rafael Nadal dropped his first set at this year's championship, with his longtime rival Roger Federer achieving yet another milestone.
Roger Federer became the first player to contest 400 Grand Slam matches and celebrated the feat by beating Norwegian 20-year-old Casper Ruud 6-3, 6-1, 7-3 in the 3rd round in Paris yesterday. Meanwhile, in the women's side of the draw, Karolina Pliskova's quest for a maiden Grand Slam title at the French Open came to an end yesterday as the second seed lost 6-3, 6-3 to Croatia's Petra Martic.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.